Hello everyone and welcome back to the custom bass guitar series. I only have about 2 hours in the workshop today, so we best get cracking. Right, so this is looking pretty good. Lots of even squeeze out all the way along. I mean, let's just get the cramps off, shall we? So, I guess first job, probably to get a lot of this glue off, I think, because it's quite a mess at the moment. Okay, so this side here is the book matched face, so I'm going to clean this up and then we're going to put this side over the planer first, and then I'll thickness the opposite side down to the dimension that's needed. So just going to get some of these like beads of glue off. Okay. Right, so the walnut in the middle is sitting a tad too high at the moment, and what I don't want to do is put that on the planer and accidentally rock it to one side and therefore put a skew on the neck. So what I'm going to do is plane down the walnut by hand and just make that so it's flatter than it is now. Then when it comes to putting it on the planer, should be a much nicer face and it will keep everything in line. I think that'll do. Machines are definitely calling. Right, that is all cleaned up. It is looking absolutely beautiful. So what I've done now is cut it to it's not its final length, but it's oversized length in which all of my dimensions are dimensioned off, I suppose. So then when the body gets stuck on, I'll have a square end that I can shape to the body, and similarly on the headstock as well. So now what I need to do is mark all of the dimensions, such as where the fretboard starts, where the bridge is going to start, and where the nut is going to start as well, which involves lots of complicated dimensions down to 0.10 of a decimal. So I'm going to be as accurate as possible as I can here, obviously, and then we need to start cutting the tapers into the neck and also start rough shaping it for now, because I don't fancy removing all of this material with an angle grinder and rasp and all that. So let's show you how I do this. So firstly, I'm going to establish which side I want to be the headstock and which side to be the bridge. And I've just said it, I want that side to be the headstock and that side to be the bridge. Reason being, because I'm going to be cutting away some of this material, I'm going to lose that book match that I've got going up here if I make that the headstock on it. But if I make this the top of the guitar, I'm going to have the Buckeye burr covering this. So that nice book match is going to be on the underside, which means this is going to be the top of the bridge and this is going to be where the nut is. Now, everything is going to be measured from the 10th fret, because the 10th fret is the one that's going to be perpendicular to the centre line. Now in reality, if you look at the scale length of the guitar, so where the string is anchored at the bridge and where it's anchored at the nut, it'll be the 12th fret that is actually the midpoint. But because I've done this so the 12th fret is off at an angle, it's a bit of a dodgy one to start all your references from. So the 10th fret is where it's going to be perpendicular, and that is where everything's going to be referenced from. So firstly, I need to establish a centre line on here because I planed both edges of this ash. I don't know if this is equal on both sides or not. So centre line on both ends, which means measuring halfway through the walnut. So it's 22mm wide, so I'll mark at 11mm directly in the centre and one at the other end as well. And then because my metre ruler can't stretch that far, we're going to do another one at the midpoint. Just make sure this pencil's nice and sharp and accurate for this. Okay, so we've got a good centre line up the walnut. Now we've got this gorgeous protractor here, which is made by Incra. I'll put a link to it in the description, which will take you to an Amazon page for it. Lovely, lovely little tool. It's quite flexible as well, and we'll be using it a lot in this project. What's also nice about this is that there is like little holes in it all the way through, so you can line this up perfectly with the angle that you want and then draw straight through that. And the little dots at the top are at every single degree, and these ones here are at every 5 degrees, and you've also got a scale and stuff at the bottom. It's a lovely, lovely little tool that unfortunately I don't get to use that often. So this 10th fret is 636.9mm up from the bottom, so let's just make that 637 right there. So then what I can do is get the bottom of the protractor lined up with that mark, and then get 90 degrees lined up with this centre line, and then I can square that across. There we go, we know that is where the 10th fret is going to be, which is the perpendicular one. The reason I did not do a square for this is because, like I say, I don't actually know if these sides are square to that centre line or not. It looks like it is, but better to be safe than sorry, isn't it? So then I can mark the taper on the neck, I think. So let's see, I think this is at its maximum width down here. Yeah, 109, I think that is exactly where it needs to be on here. Yeah, 109. And then up here it needs to be 51.26, which divided by 2 is 25.6, which means I need to measure 25.6 either side of that centre line. And then because I knew my ruler wouldn't be long enough, I've got a little mark here at the 10th fret, which is 80.5mm wide. 40.25. So let's join those up. Okay, and then this one here is going to go right to the corner. Taper marked on there. Wait for that plane to pass over. So now to determine where the nut is going to be. Now on these drawings I could have done an angle if I wanted, but that won't be as accurate as 2 measurements taken, one from the top of the neck here and one from the bottom. So again, we're going to go from the 10th fret along the centre line. Now because this is an angled nut on here, we need the top one to be 398. So a little mark on the centre line there, and the bottom one needs to be 373. So another little mark on the centre line. And now get my protractor, line it up with that centre line on one of the marks. So this is going to be the bottom of the nut, so that one's going to be transferred down here. There's location 1 of the nut, and then the second mark. Then the second mark can be transferred up to the top. And then if I join those up, that will be the angle of the nut. Voila, that looks about right. So now I can do exactly the same for the end of the fretboard. So the top side of it is going to be 292, so I'll get that lined up again. 1 mark there, and the bottom one 275. 1 mark there. And we'll transfer those to their respective locations. This mark is going to be the bottom line, and this one's going to be the top. Join them up. There is the end of the fretboard, and then need to measure down to where the bridge is going to be now. So 508.97 for the top and 478.54 for the bottom, so 478. There we go, and transfer those. There we go, and now join those up, and that is going to be the bridge location. Okay, so that's the top of it worked out. Now we can do the other side. So once again, we're going to measure a centre line. So these ones don't have to be too accurate because again I've done them oversized, but might as well do it according to the drawing because that's what I've worked out apparently. So 4, 6, 7. So that is where the main thickness is going to end, and that's where we're going to start tapering for the neck, and then I'll shape all of this section afterwards, but this is where we're going to taper the neck with the bandsaw. And then from the other end, it's 304.1, that's where the headstock shape is going to start taking place. So all this section here is going to be the neck being carved out. So then, let's do it on both sides. I'm going to square these round so I can see them on the bandsaw. Okay, so there's the line squared around from the body end. Now we're looking at the top of the guitar. So from the bottom of the guitar we need to measure up 25mm, and then the thickness that's left over on the top here is going to be the thickness of the neck. So 25mm up from there, which makes this area here the waist. And then we need to measure to this end mark here. And then I'm missing the dimension here, but I can work it backwards. So 248 is going to take me right to the end of the fretboard. So if I square it round, that's where I know the nut is going to be. So that's the end point of the nut on the headstock. And then I have this dimension. I need to measure 8mm down, which is the clearance provided for the headstock, plus the thickness of the headstock, which is 15, so that makes 23. Okay, so I've got 2 marks there now, which is going to be the thickness of the headstock. And to get these parallel along here, I'm going to use a marking gauge. Carefully score all the way along, making sure the marking gauge doesn't track the grain. There we go. So, waist above it, and that little strip along there, that is going to be our headstock. In fact, the bottom of it is going to carry on all the way through here to this other line that I drew on. That's all going to be waist, and then I need to measure 3mm up from there, and then I can join that mark with the one down the bottom here, and that will give me the neck taper. Okay, so now I need to work off the drop off part from the end of the fretboard. So that line is going to be here. Square that down. So this is the body section here, and obviously the fretboard is going to be raised off of that. So this offset is what I'm marking now. And that needs to be 10mm down. In fact, I'm just going to do that with the marking gauge again. Okay, now do I need to do anything else? I think I'm ready to start cutting this out. I've just realised that it might not actually be a good idea to cut these tapers off just yet, because I need to route a truss rod cavity. Now this is what goes in the neck, and you can adjust it from the top, and it basically buckles itself. So if the neck starts bending one way, you can adjust the Allen key at the end of this and it will bend it the other way. And this needs to be recessed into this material, dead centre. But to do that, I need to use a jig, which is attached to the top of this somehow. Now I could run a parallel fence up the edge of this material to route the groove, but like I say, we're not entirely sure if the edge of this material is parallel to that centre line, so attaching the jig to the top is going to be needed. I could do this with double-sided tape, but if it slips, that would be problematic, so I think I'm going to screw it down, in which case I can screw it into the waste material either side of the neck, which is going to be cut off afterwards. Now, looking at the time, I'm not really going to have enough time to knock together this jig. So, I think what I'm going to do, call it there today, because this is taking a lot longer than I thought it would. Call it there, and then in the next episode I'll get the groove routed out and we will cut the neck to its final shape. I will see you then.